Hi there, welcome back to Supercharge Fridays. How are you doing? If this is your first time, welcome. Think of this as your happy hour related to all things careers. We go live at the same time every Friday for 3 years we've been doing it. So, if you're coming here for the first time, you're so welcome. If you're been around the block with me a few times, how are you doing? Come in and chat, say hello, introduce yourself. Where are you logging in from? Which city? Which country, interact with each other. We have such a fun session for you today. But before we get into it, I also wanted to say, because it's Friday and if you're watching me live, and by the way, if you're watching me on the replay, put hashtag replay as well. So yeah, we can show you a little bit of love. I also wanted to say a quick plug, put in a quick plug because every Saturday morning, I have a newsletter that goes out with 3 insights. It takes 3 minutes to read and it's fun. I have a lot of fun writing it. I have about close to about 10,000 subscribers to that newsletter. It's if it's something, if you enjoy the kind of content I put out, I think you'd enjoy the newsletter as well. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe at any point of time. So without further ado, today we're going to bring in a lovely guest who's actually been on Supercharge Fridays twice before. When I see good people, I want them back, right? That's what we do. So we are going to talk about strengths, like what is a strength, and not like blah stuff like I'm really good with people. That's not a strength. We're going to get more in detail. What is a strength? What can you do with the strength? How can you know what your strength is? All of that good stuff. So without further ado, welcome to Gehan Haridy-Ardanowski. Welcome back to Super Fridays.
And my joy is not only for being here, Sonal, of course, but the fact that you just perfectly shared my name. Perfectly. I thank you. I mean, I know you know it, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's still with people. Oh my gosh, you are such a gracious host. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to
You
have you
have no
here.
idea.
And this is important. I want to just say this before we get started. When you meet someone who's got a name or a last name, a first name or a last name that is a little bit different from the convention, right? That you live in, the country, the city that you live in, make sure you take the time to practice because that person finds it delightful, just like G did. We're going to call her G. Jihan goes by G because it matters. We feel seen and we feel heard. Am I right or am I right?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's funny about my name because I've been thinking about this lately. I recently started a new job, still getting to know people, and being in HR. I used to go by Gigi. A very, very quick story. So years and years ago, I used to go by my nickname Gigi, which some people here, some of our mutual friends, like Jeff Young, for example, always shares Gigi. I love it. And so what's so funny is the fact that when I graduated from college, because I thought, okay, I now have an HR position. I'm a professional. Can't really go by GG, and people were encouraging me to go back to Gehan. So I started going by G. Let's simplify it, G. And that was
Yeah.
20 some odd years ago. So now
Yeah.
I go by G or GG,
Yeah.
depending on people's moods. So even now, when I introduce myself, I say, please call me G. And then
Okay.
when I see people continuously trying to pronounce Gehan, I say, no, it's okay. Just call me G. So
Beautiful.
yes, I'm Gehan Haridy-Ardanowski. I go by G for short. And so now I am just honored to be here always. I just adore you. And I do read your newsletters, by the way, your emails.
Oh,
So
thank
I
you.
find your weekly tips and tricks, everything so digestible. So thank you for all you do. I just want to say that too,
Perfect.
because
Perfect.
you
Thank
know
you.
that.
It's lovely to have you. And I wanted to say, by the way, it's 7 in the morning in Texas, where G is joining us from. So that takes, you're not up at 7 like groggy reading the paper. We're talking up ready, like she's got this vibe at 7. And speaking of like early morning, we have someone who's up at 5 a.m. in California. So lovely to see you here. Dan, we've got people joining from around the world. My goodness, I see Chicago, I see Philippines, I see New York City, Bangladesh. Amazing. Hi, Christine. How are you doing? Finland is in the house. How awesome! How awesome is this, right? So beautiful. We have India. So quickly, we don't have to introduce you. G, you work in HR. You've worked in HR for between 20-25 years, a very long time, right? And you've studied strengths amongst the many things that you've studied. We're going to talk about strengths today. We've got a lot to cover and a lot to learn. Maybe we have some stuff to unlearn and relearn. That's the thing always with when it comes to certain subjects. Let's start. Let's get into it. G, what does a strength mean? What is a strength?
Okay, well, strengths, as we all know the word loosely, it's just, our best selves. It's being strong in our best selves. And what I'm going to share really pertains more specifically to Strengths Finder. So I know people have heard the term in the past at one point or another. Hey, Strengths Finder, I think I read the book or I took a test. And really what that is, and it's been rebranded. So to back up a little bit for a second, because I don't want to muddy the conversation too much by giving too much to this, but it's an assessment through Gallup. If you're
Yeah.
familiar with Gallup,
Yeah.
organizational, okay, so I don't have to get into that. Gallup, folks. So
Yeah.
Clifton Strengths, there's an assessment that you can take, whether you're a job seeker, whether you're in career transition, whether you just want to do some self-discovery. There's an assessment that you can take. It's called the Clifton Strengths, again,
Yeah.
rebranded from Strengths Finder.
Yeah.
And what it does is you take an assessment of about 177 questions, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And what that does, after about a half hour, it spits out a report and it will share with you your top 5 strengths. And what they are based on are talent themes. So there's 34 talent themes that are the criteria. And this report will give you your top 5. And I'll give you some terminology. For example, you could be responsibility, you can be analytical, you can be strategic. And that top 5 report leans into the best 5 strengths of yourself. And from that, what I've encouraged people for years to do is to take that information and in your conversations, and especially for job seekers and interviews, it articulates and spells out really what you're best at and how you can bring your best self to a job, for example. And so I'll use the job piece here, Sonal, because I know that a large chunk of your audience is
Yeah.
job seekers, but again, it's really for anybody and everybody.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. So, first of all, it is worth it to make. We're not spokes. We're not spokespersons for Clifton Strengths. We don't get paid by them, but it's one of the best assessments. I saw a very interesting comment here, and I'm going to be very mindful of this. Hey, Mayank, thank you for the feedback. We're going to make sure we don't speak very, very fast because we have audience from around the world. Sometimes I do it when I'm excited, but thank you for calling me out on that. So this is one of the best assessments out there to know what your strengths are. And it is quite affordable to take that first test, right? It's not hundreds of dollars, whichever country you live in. I think it's $20 or $25. And it's something you keep, the report you keep for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
There are different ways to take. You have the strength finder. I know that G, you're familiar with this one. If you do not have any budget whatsoever and you want to have a good idea, one other test I recommend is the high 5, which is HI5. I think that's how you write it. High 5 strengths. Just you'll find that. Just Google that. When you Google it, the word will come up, and it's 100% free and very similar. They keep asking some repeated questions over and over because they want to see where is the trend, in which direction are you. So that gives you a good idea of what your strengths are. And a strength is a way that you know that something you bring in, which is your best self. That's what you said, G. And you also answered this next question. You're a little ahead of me. How can I find out what my strength is? The first way is a very scientific way, which is the assessment. Is there any other way, G, that we can find out what our strengths are?
Related to this specific topic, no. I mean, I don't have a free assessment option. The high 5, interestingly
No, not
enough,
assessment. Not
oh,
assessment, like specifically speaking, but in general, is there any other way to find out what our strengths are? Just living our life experiences.
well, I think, again, let's, in terms of strengths, it's in anything and everything we do and how we show up as our best self. So you nailed something at the beginning of the conversation. So you talked about this morning piece, right? So I can tell you that however I show up to anything, and I share this as I am getting better at this as I get older, I know I am a morning person. I am not my best self at night. I can articulate better in the morning. I'm more functional in the morning. I know to a conversation or an event or what have you, early is my best shine. That's just who I am. It's what's inside of you. And I think it's just one of those things where over time you take assessments and you have conversations, and in many ways people will tell you. So I'll give you another example is even with branding. People for a while now have been sharing with me, oh, gee, your brand is this, your brand is that. And I say, I don't think I understand what that means. And when people tell you you're good at something or you come across a certain way, you lean into that, lean into the best, version of yourself versus consistently kicking yourself for what you may not be so good at, if that makes sense.
It does. I was actually gonna add to this that one way to find out, one very easy and a very predictable way to find out, and it's very reliable, is through the assessments. The other way as well is also through feedback that you get, repeatable feedback, and
Yes.
particularly strong positive feedback. Every time you make a presentation, hey, uh Kelly, you're really good at this. You're really good at presenting, or you're really good at audience management. And Kelly's like, I actually never knew that. That's interesting. So it's very highly likely that you are not familiar with your own strengths. You have blind spots when it comes to your strengths. So pay attention to
Mhm.
positive compliments, like, feedback, good feedback.
I thrive on that. And that's why there's always these conversations and these posts about surround yourself with people who bring out the best in you. And, even the way you introduced me today, Sonal, again, you're giving me this feedback and impression of myself that, oh, wow, maybe is lost on me sometimes because I don't always believe in my best self. Whereas other people like yourself remind you, hey, you are this, you are worthy, you are an expert, you are XYZ. So again, that feedback piece is critical, and surround yourself with amazing people. Again, that's why
Yeah.
you're here today, and
Yeah,
um,
no,
you have
that's
an
very
amazing
true.
audience. Yeah.
We were, in case just a quick backstage banter G and I were doing before we went live, and G kind of hinted at it multiple times. But Sonal, I'm not an expert in this particular strength finder. I'm not an expert in this. And I was like, yeah, but you have a certification in this particular thing. You've done it. And she was like, yeah. So the positive thing about surrounding yourself with people who see the positive in you is that you will see that in yourself. It's literally a mirror reflection. And by the way,
Yes.
it is the same thing when you surround yourself with negative. The opposite will happen. You will only see limitations and weaknesses as opposed to what comes naturally to you and what you're good at, because that is, you're blind to that. Right. So excellent point. I'm glad we talked about this. And talk to us now, G. And by the way, feel free to ask if you have any questions about this in the chat. Please just plug it in. Do not hesitate. Do not self-censor. I see a lovely quote here from Vishal who says, "Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one." You gotta get strong, right? You can't get strong with just everything is given to you on a platter. So thank you for that. Very nicely shared. Now, G, talk to us about, there are some good things and bad things in everything, right? Specifically when it comes to assessments, that I have seen this, and I know you have seen this. There can be a little bit of an over reliance on them. But I want to hear from you, from also as a recruiter, as an HR person, as a person who's taken a strengths test, about the good and the bad.
Well, especially from a recruitment standpoint, I will tell you this. I've been fortunate to not have worked for companies that rely on these as a pre-employment measurement tool, if you will, one's ability or capability to do a job. So thankfully, I haven't. I can think in all of my years of working in HR and recruitment, one company I worked for, I think, really strongly used this to essentially weed candidates out of a process. And I think it was more specific to sales, from that standpoint. Now, with regard to assessments overall, I think that where we get challenged is that we feel, okay, I'm taking an assessment, especially in a, job, search process, and you don't get a job for a certain reason. We don't know, okay, is it based on the assessment? Is it this, that, or the other? I don't really feel.
Just one sec, G. I don't know what's happened, but I lost you. I lost your audio. Just give me a, just let's get that organized. Please feel free in the meantime to share not only questions but also share thoughts Hopefully, I can be heard. Can you give me a quick thumbs up in the comments if you can hear me? I don't. Why don't I hear you? Can you tell me what's going on? My audio's lost. Give me a sec. Is it? Can you tell me if G's audio's lost or my audio's lost? I'm audible. G, do you hear me? You hear me? Why don't I hear you, sweetheart? It suddenly disappeared. G is not. Okay. So something has happened halfway in your sentence. I'm so sorry that this happened because I know you were talking about something important. So hold your thought like right there. And we'll get back to it. Yeah. It's probably related to the earplugs that you have. We'll get this sorted.
Can you hear me now?
I do hear you now.
Yes.
Okay, you're a little more faint than before.
Okay, can you hear me at all?
Now it's louder.
I'm just sitting here.
Okay, it's better. I have no idea what happened. I'm sorry. Hopefully it wasn't the battery or something. But
Yeah.
while we have you, do you remember what you were saying about you've seen those companies where, they've done some crazy things,
Yeah.
some great things. Get back to that. Get back to that.
Yeah.
It was only when I lifted my hand that otherwise you were fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for bearing with
Oh
us.
my gosh, your
Appreciate it,
audience.
guys.
Yay. And now that I'm looking, I can see comments and I can see, yes, it sounds like
It's good. You're back.
thank you,
You're back.
Fadi Ramzi, who says now it's perfect.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank
it's
you.
perfect. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. So, I think where I was going with this is with strengths. This is not it's not necessarily used in a pre-employment or pre-hire process. It's really something where if you know your strengths ahead of time, you can take these into an interview process and be able to articulate. That's, I think, the point that I was going for here. And I'm sorry we got a little bit lost on that, but I think the other question at one point was, at which point do you actually take the assessment? I encourage people to take it whenever you want, but especially for job seekers. And that's the piece that I keep leaning into because I've been in the job search many times over the years for various reasons, layoff, quitting, the toxic jobs and the bosses and all that good stuff. I've been through it all. And I joke about that. Go to my profile for a laugh, if you will. But I've been very, very blessed. And one of the
Yeah.
things I can tell you, even most recently, when I transitioned into the role that I'm in now, I went into my conversations because they started more as a conversation. And I wasn't even at the time applying for a specific job. It was more, let's have a conversation. Let's see where this goes. And I was very specific in, hey, if you're looking for a comp analyst person, I'm not an analytical person. Analytical is my number 34, which is the very bottom of my strengths. So, and again, I spent 2 years in a role at PwC as a financial analyst before I even knew what strengths was. So that's another story.
So
But
this is I'm going to hold you here.
yes,
Hold on here and double click. You spent 2 years in an analyst role.
Mhm.
And analyst happened to be number 34, which means out of how many strengths was it 34?
34.
So it was at the bottom of the list.
At the time, it was 30. Yeah, and it's since slid
And you
even more. So
didn't,
yes, I
I'm
had no
guessing
idea.
you didn't know that.
I had no idea.
What happens when you don't know your strengths and you don't know what is the opposite? I hate the word weakness. It comes across as very kind of negative and
I know.
accusatory. What do you call that, G? The
I
opposite
need
of
to come
strength?
up with a word for that, but I just say areas of improvement. They're not
Areas
our
of
best
improvement,
shine.
areas of development. If you're
Yeah.
working in a job where the number one core skill you need corresponds to your area of development instead of a strength. Gee, you did this for 2 years working at one of the big four. What was that like? What was the impact of that?
Honestly, it was very demoralizing for me. I worked with the best team at the number one accounting firm in the world at the time. I mean, this was back in 2011, 2013, literally 2 years spent. I had never heard of strengths before. And I went to work every single day, beating my head against a wall of I was functional, I was doing the job, but I was not happy.
and I had no idea why. I loved the people, loved and proud to be where I was at, but the job itself, in fact, there were points when I even asked to be removed from the job, and I couldn't. And there wasn't another place for me, and so ultimately I ended up leaving. And then the day I left my job, I learned about strengths.
Oh,
Coincidentally, I went to a
better
networking event, and then I took the assessment a week later, and that was 10 years ago.
better late than never. But
Yeah.
if you are, it's a very good point. And if you're watching us live right now, you're watching us on the replay, whatever it is. If you are miserable where you are today, the work that you do, and you don't know why, do not keep going forward and pretending that you don't see it, or hoping it's going to get better, because it's likely not, right? Go and find out whether it's the free test, or if you're watching us on LinkedIn, even if you're watching us on YouTube and Facebook, by the way, go check out Risto's profile on LinkedIn. I've placed it right here. He posted it 2 years ago. It's a free tool to use. Thank you, Risto. You are amazing. And take advantage. You don't have to spend any kind of money. Nobody's out to get you. Do not, we tend to think like, yeah, this sounds amazing. It sounds a bit fluffy. If it saves you 2 years of misery, of what, if we are lucky, 80 years is our lifespan these days. If nothing bad happens before that, if you're lucky and it takes 2 years, it shaves off 2 years of misery from your entire life. It is worth it, whether it's $25, whether it's free, whether it's even more, whatever it is, you do a premium program, everything, like, it's worth it. So this is critical. And I like that you said, when should we take them? Right? It's like saying, I always say this, when I'm ill, it's not the time for a vitamin, it's the time
Yes.
for a painkiller.
Oh, yes.
So do not take it. It was going to come into my newsletter tomorrow. Do not take, sorry, there's a little echo happening. Never mind. Do not take this when you need it. If you can help it, take it before you need it, which is like a vitamin, and it's going to help you in the long run. So amazing. Oh, we have lovely folks here. There's a skills gap. Thanks, Kev. Feel free to share if you have any insights or resources that you'd like to share. Hey, Shannon, is there something we can use to self-assess? Yes, Shannon, we talked about this. I'll make sure that I list all of this in the comments when we are done, but we talked about it. So if you're just joining us, feel free to catch the replay when we are done. So we have lots of more juicy things to cover. By the way, if you're just joining us, welcome. So far, what we've done is we've covered what is the strength, how can you find out what your strength is, what are the good and bad things about strengths, right? By the way, we didn't talk about this. What is the good? So talk to one tool that G is familiar with and she highly recommends is the Strengths Finder, which you get on Gallup.com.
It's actually UP. So it's
Ah, I
GALLUP. That's okay.
had a feeling
That's
I
okay.
misspelled it. Okay, let me
If
fix that
someone else
right
can
away.
dump it.
Yeah, exactly. Strength
Awesome.
Finder at
So,
gallup.com. I got that corrected. And G, before we move forward,
yeah.
the good and the bad, right? Is there anything you want to add here? Did we miss anything?
I think the good part, I mean, again, these are conversation pieces in anything. And like I said, with my current role, I was very specific in knowing my strengths ahead of time. I came to the table with being able to say, hey, if you have a role that does XYZ, and knowing that I'm poor in XYZ, I said, I'm not the person for you. So I'm literally, cutting that off at the pass. When it's something where you can lean into the things that you're good at, hey, I'm not good at this, but you're going to want me for this instead. And that, and I'll give you a great example. My number one is responsibility.
Mm,
Sometimes with my responsibility, that's my number one. I'm conscientious. If I make a mistake, I beat myself up for it. It's one of those, sometimes, I abuse myself to a fault, if you will, but I'm going to show up. Like even
mm.
this morning, for example, showing up here and very conscientious of the fact that audio comes into play. And yet again, we,
It shows up. This is something that shows up again and again. So when you
yes,
know it as well, you're going to realize that in the past, a strength has shown up in all kinds of scenarios, not
exactly.
only like a work scenario, but scenario with your parents, with your kids, with your friends. So that makes a lot of sense. And I
Absolutely.
also just want to add here, like with everything, right? do not over rely on one source or one tool only. It's part of a puzzle. Do not underestimate your gut instincts. Do not underestimate feedback from respectable sources, people you respect, because they can see things, because they know you in 3D. You know what I mean? It's like you put all of this down on a form. At the end of the day, it's, you know, populates all of the data, and it comes up with based on thousands and thousands of other people and research. But there is no such thing as 100%. Like, it could be that analyst is your 23rd, which means it's very low in your list of strengths. But you think there are times when that comes to the surface. You need, I just want to say that you want to weigh it carefully, and not over rely on only gut or over rely on only assessments. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing too, and I didn't articulate this earlier on, but with this assessment, the reason why we don't encourage people to go too far beyond the top 5, at least initially, is because you don't want to lean into focusing on, I don't want to say the weakest, again, going back to the language that we were talking about, the parts of ourselves that maybe we're not as strong in. Instead of trying to improve upon those, you want to focus on amplifying your best. That's what I say. So
Yeah. No, that's really important. And I think I'm so glad you said this right now. 34 sounds very overwhelming. Start with 5, top 5. Start
that's
with top
exactly
5.
it.
I should have said this at the beginning. Start with top 5. That is the one that I think is very low priced, and you'll get access when it comes to. Saurabh, you were asking this question. The link we talked about is Gallup. But you'll find a free version as well. And that is something that Risto shared. So I know you're watching on YouTube. So go and follow me on LinkedIn and see the comments on LinkedIn. And Risto has shared this here as well. It's a little bit scattered here because we are streaming across multiple platforms. So now, G, we're going to come to the juicy part. I'm just going to make sure that I haven't missed any questions so far. Kevin says you're better than coffee. Love it. Maybe that's a strength. Yeah, who knows? So, G, once we know our strengths, the rubber meets the road. Now what?
Oh, and one of the things that I do, great question. One of the things I actually put in my profile and in my about section, and I did this really more when I was in my job search, or just again going back to that branding piece and explaining what that means, for someone who might want to engage me for services or a role, if you will, is articulating exactly what that means. So, for instance, my top 5 are articulated in my profile to say, hey, I am an activator. That's among them. I'm also, significant. I want everybody to be their best self. So I'm here because I feel it's my duty to share this information with you. And so in a roundabout way, that is also in my profile. So going back to how we present ourselves in the job search and then for other opportunities, you want to make sure that you have a good sense of self-awareness. And through, and by the way, Risto, thank you for sharing the free piece. I'm not familiar with it, and it's never been brought up before, so I'll have to look into that. So I don't know what that looks like, so thank you.
Yeah.
But however you choose to take the assessment or however you choose to brand yourself, it's really important to know yourself first and then be able to share that, whether it's even just that one top strength. Bring that to an interview. Talk it through with people, again, who are giving you that mirror that you shared, Sonal. So.
Yeah. And I think that's where the magic happens, then when you know what they are, those top 5, and when you see, on the other hand, where are the problems? Why are they looking for a open position? Like, why do they have an open position? What are the problems they're looking to solve? And when you find that sweet spot where your strengths and their problems coincide, you can craft career stories and share them. You're going to blow their mind, because very few people take the effort to, you know what I mean, that look for that in the middle, as opposed to just talking about strengths blindly, or just talking about why they are right for this position, but nothing to do with how that actually helps them. So when you combine the two together, you are unstoppable as a candidate, and you'll be in the top 2, top 3 of the finalists. I think that makes a big difference. And the magic word that you shared, G, is self-awareness. And we lead with our strengths. We don't lead with what we're not good at. If it's an accounting role, obviously your strength is numbers. But if you also happen to be numbers and very high on collaboration, or whatever the technical name is for those strengths, or you're very strong with numbers, but you're also like quant, like analytics, but you're also responsibility, no matter what, end of the month, financial reports are going to go out, payroll is going to go out, things are going to happen. That's what they want. They want people who can continue to keep things moving, but take it at a higher level. So that is amazing. And I also like how concrete your example was. Put it in your profile, talk about it in your resume, talk about it in your interviews. Why would you not do it? Because this is something that helps you to be memorable, right?
Absolutely. These are the things that help you stand out from the rest. And I absolutely love, and again, and to give a little bit more about myself, is the fact that I am an HR manager, but I'm a recruiter. I've been a job seeker, I should say, in my previous lives. And all of this aligns in that when I, as a recruiter slash HR person, go out to look at someone's profile or try to get to know them a little bit more, that person who's going to share about themselves, whether it's specific to Clifton Strengths or if it's something else in their profile, let's see you shine. And that's the point of being on LinkedIn. So again, I encourage job seekers to look at strengths for from the simple standpoint of this is low hanging fruit. And again, I'm referring really to the $20 version, US dollar version. It's available. And I should also say to those of you globally, it's available in various languages. I believe it's around 25 languages. So there's opportunity here for everybody. It's a global assessment. So it's not just specific to the US.
I have to repeat again, we are not affiliated, but you know what? They should be paying us.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yes. So if I can briefly, and this is not a plug on me, but if people were to go to my profile, let me explain exactly what YouMap is, just really quickly touch base on it. So how you're probably wondering, first of all, who is this, woman and why is she talking on this topic? Clifton Strengths for me, again, I shared the example earlier with PwC. It was just so empowering, and having an aha moment 10 years ago. Now it's almost been 10 years to know that analytical was at my bottom. That's why I struggled, right? So for years and years, I wanted to possibly become Gallup certified. I am not. So as Sonal mentions, neither of us are affiliated. We don't get paid a dime to share this with you, but I decided last year to get certified in something called YouMap. And if anyone out there has heard of YouMap, it's a tool especially helpful for job seekers when they're transitioning careers to be able to take their strengths. So you take your top 5 strengths, but you combine them with your skills, your abilities, and your personality. And it creates a story, a narrative, if you will, that you can present and share yourself in your interview processes. And beyond that, no matter how the job search goes, again, it goes back to knowing yourself and having this information, being armed with this, that in any conversation, anywhere you go, you can better articulate your value add over, say, the next person. And going back to that whole, interview question of, oh, what are your strengths, right? How many times have we heard that in an interview? Well, after I took this assessment a long time ago, in any interview I went to, I was able to speak more to my specific strength and how that could, be a value add to someone versus saying, oh, I'm a people person, or I'm a perfectionist is my weakness. No one wants to hear those things.
No, we want to stay away from the blah. So that is really good. This is a good tip for someone who's looking at leveling up and wants to go even further and is like, oh, hey, Rebecca, Clifton Strengths, right? You're like, oh, yeah, I know this, but I want to take it one step further. Then check out, because this is something that also requires study and certification. We're not saying you need to get certified. This is specifically for coaches, but it helps you as well. There is a book written, and the person who started YouMap as well as written the book is someone called Kristen Sherry. If you know who Kristen is, feel free to tag her. I'll make sure I tag her in the comments so we know if she knows we're talking about her. But this is really great. Now, G, I'm going to get into the juicy questions. Some people have been posting very cool questions and waiting patiently. So before we do that, I'm going to say, hey, Jasmine, I will put in, this is a little bit out of scope for today, but I will put a link to a video that I have done on how you can answer this question. It is an extremely thorough video and it'll take care of it. So just bear with me and I'll go back on YouTube and share that. Adam is asking, but sorry, before I do that, Risto has reminded us about do not only rely on one source, but different styles of assessment to get a wider perspective. Exactly. That's really great. Adam, hey, Adam, in New York City, how does Clifton Strengths compare or complement or contradict other tests like colors? There's the one which is yellow, green, all of that stuff. And he's sharing his strengths with us. Awesome. Adam, such a great question. What do you think about this?
Adam is awesome, by the way. Hi, Adam. And yes, great question. And I also need to share, I'm not an assessment expert.
No,
I'm not very familiar
just
with
your perspective. We're not going to hold it against you.
Okay, so here's the thing. A lot of these other assessments are more personality based, but this strengths is more performance based. And that's the key
Ah.
to it. So again, these are really leading into what you're strong at versus, hey, how do you interact with people, or how do you, it's the fluff. I don't want to say the fluffy stuff, but some of these other assessments might not be as specific as strengths is in some
And
of
they
these
both have
areas.
a place. They both have a place.
They
They
do.
both have their own use, but it's really good that you talked about the differentiation. One is personality, the other one is performance. You want to know this before you go in and find out and invest in, these are great team building exercises as well. That's how I did a couple of these, including the colors one.
If
And
I
then
can
there's
say something about that,
yes,
Sonal, really quick,
yes.
what's really great is that if you find the right company, and here's a great interview question, job seekers, that you can even ask in your interviews is, hey, are you familiar, recruiter slash, HR manager slash hiring manager? Are you familiar with assessments? Do you use them here? How do
Mhm.
you empower your team members to be them, their best selves, and, developmental, if you will? Look
Yeah.
for those. I mean, it's a great, great conversation starter in an interview, because that shows job seekers that you're interested in learning how you can best engage and interact with your team members. And what's amazing is that a lot of companies lean into this. And this topic actually came up where I'm at currently in the interview. And I started because I brought up strengths, and then it kind of led into another conversation. And again, very positive if you can, lean into these things
It is.
versus, again, focusing on the things that you're not good at. Any interview, it should be more of a conversation than an interrogation, I always say.
Yeah.
And
No.
just
Yeah.
having these, again, this is your arsenal. You go into it armed with this tool and knowing your best self, whether it is through the colors, which I'm not very familiar with. I think I'm a green or something. I'd have to go back and look. I'm sure I've taken it, but
No,
you've got DISC, you've got
I'm a yellow.
Myers-Briggs.
But that's good.
Yes,
This is a great way to connect with a potential interviewer.
absolutely.
Sets you apart because shows that you're people minded and you're interested in self improvement. So it's a win win.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
wonderful, wonderful. Marty's asking us, what about the descriptions offered within the strengths? How do people learn how to write clever statements? What a great question. Using this content, those descriptions, because they can be a bit, like not always easy to understand. And how do they use this content to talk about themselves in conversation, in networking, and in interviews?
Mhm. In the reporting, and I'll speak in, hi, Marty, by the way, I'll speak specifically to the reporting piece of strengths as opposed to other
Yeah.
assessments. But
Yeah.
with strengths, what's really great is once you actually end up doing your assessment, I think you mentioned this earlier on, but it immediately spits out I guess your results, if you will,
Yeah.
in different formats. And some of that is a report that will break down each of your 5, and it'll give you those key sentences that you can go back and highlight and literally look at and say, hey, yes, this sounds like me. This sentence sounds like me. And then from there, that's how you take those key words and you put it together in your statement. And again, there's coaches out there. You can pay coaches and people, myself included, through the YouMap piece, especially by taking those 4 key pieces that I mentioned earlier. I'm not
Yeah.
here to pitch that, but really more, you can do this on your
Yeah.
own if that's, your choice. But the material's there for you to do it, and have someone review that with you. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, that mirror, again, when people are giving you that feedback, share these learnings with people in your network, your friends, your family, and say, hey, this is what I learned about myself. How do you feel? Is this how you see me? And
Yeah.
getting that feedback from them. And then from there, you can kind of compose that and blend that, if
Yeah.
you will.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really useful, and hopefully, Marty, that answers your question. Such a juicy question because that is where the magic happens. And Rebecca's sharing as well. I wish I'd known about Clifton Strengths years ago. Would have made a huge difference, right? So love it. All right, so we've come now. We've been talking for like 40 minutes. So going to do a quick recap. We talked about what is a strength. How can you find out what a strength is? What do you do? Um, when you know what your strengths are, what is the good thing and bad thing about assessments in general. We had views, we shared those views, some resources for you to look at, free as well as paid. Check out YouMap, check out Gallup, and check out another one which I'm going to put in the comments based on what Risto has shared. So lastly, before I let you go, G, someone who's listening today, and they're going to, we're going to stop and they're going to go back to their day. You and I are going to go back to our day. What is one thing you want them to take away from today?
Oh my goodness. Well, from any of your shows, again, there's always so much, but especially on a Friday, I hope that people take, this weekend even to kind of noodle some of what I've shared today. Strengths is so important. I mean, all assessments are valuable, and I'm not here to knock one over another. And like I said, I'm not affiliated. I'm not here to push any one thing. But it's important, again, to have that one thing that gives you a sense of empowerment. We're at a really interesting time. I mean, again, we hear every day about more and more layoffs. Everyone's on edge. Everyone's sensitive to other people, being in these situations. Let's support each other the best we can. Support other people, as they take a look at these strengths and as they're going back and trying to determine what they want next for themselves. I think it's a good time, as unfortunate as it is, to be out there right now in the market, especially if you have recently transitioned out of a role, whether through your own choosing, through layoff, what have you. It's also, again, it's fresh new year, fresh timing. Take a look at this. Look at other assessments as well. Find what suits you best, but do something that makes you feel good, not feel forced into it. And, I did a post the other day. If people go to my profile, my most recent post from a few days ago, talking about that word of the year. So again, what do you want to lean into this year, right? And so I actually talk about this. If you don't have a word, and if you've been stumped and you see all these posts and you're overwhelmed and intimidated.
I'm one of them. And I'm like, what is this, a fashionable thing? I don't know. We have a million words in my head.
You haven't selected one? No.
But I read your post, but I'm one of those people that you're talking about that can't decide.
The words, and you'll see this, folks, words like focus, intention,
Action,
those kind of words. And again, if you can put some substance around it, those are valuable. But the reason why I leaned into strengths with this post is because, again, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, so to speak. For people who've been curious about, again, that one thing, that special thing that sets them apart from, say, other candidates, or just, in general conversation. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to over the years, and again, not selling anything. I'm just having these conversations, and people are fascinated by this. Just to be able to say, hey, I took an assessment. I learned this about myself today, and it feels pretty gosh darn good, because now I don't have to kick myself for the other things that maybe I'm not so great at. And again, that's why I never ever ask the weakness question anymore in an interview.
No.
I always ask a candidate, what's the one thing, out there about yourself that you could possibly improve upon? And I don't think I touched on this earlier, but I think you asked that question, Sonal, but it's that weakness question. Again, spin it. It's always leaning back into, hey, you know what? I'm not so great at this, but I took an assessment. I've learned that this is not what I'm good at. And that's why I now lean into other things that I am. And so if, for example, as a job seeker, well, hiring, manager, I know I'm not really good at this. So I can tell you right out the gate before anything else, I'm not good at this. I'm not going to be my best self. But here is what I can bring. Here is what I can shine in. And this is why you want me for X, Y, Z.
Yeah. I think that takes a lot of practice. But once you get there and you feel confident to say, not for this, hire me for this. And this, I'm going to knock it out of the park. They know, not wasting their time. You're not wasting your time. So amazing. If you're watching on LinkedIn, make sure you follow G on LinkedIn. If you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, follow her. Find out on LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn account, what are you doing? Just sign up. Follow. I mean, again, we're not affiliates of LinkedIn. It's just, this is where conversations happen. So definitely take advantage and learn from people like G. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you to our lovely audience for joining us. I hope this was helpful. What are your comments? What are you taking away? Share this with a friend. Share this entire live stream with a friend that you think would benefit from this. And I shall see you at the same time next week on Supercharged Fridays. Have a lovely Friday and a lovely weekend, G. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.